here's how I go to everything. If I'm flying and leaving my family and my employees and my business to go and be better, I got to have a game plan to get there. So I go in with this thing called an MPV. Hey, what's up, To The Point listeners? It's your boy, Cristiano, the host of To The Point Home Services Podcast. That is To The Point Home Services Podcast. Who couldn't listen that fast? Sometimes I think I talk a little bit too fast. I don't even realize it. And I got an East Texas boy on here, so I probably ought to talk real slow to make sure that my guest, Trey McWilliams, can hear me. So if you guys don't know who Trey is the CEO of Blue Cardinal Home Services Group and CEO of McWilliams and Son, if you know him from that, heating and air conditioning. But you guys also do plumbing too, don't you?
Yeah, we do.
Why the hell, why don't you add that in the damn name?
Well, I need to fix that.
Get your marketing right. Come on, Crystal, help him out. Help a brother out. Literally, your brother out. But hey, man, I'm excited to have you on here. You guys, it's a third generation company since 1974, mind you, which is before my time, out of East Texas. Exes live in Texas. I don't think I have any exes in Texas, but there's a possibility that a buckle bunny or two I might have met in my rodeo journey, my rodeo days. So when I think of East Texas, Trey, I think of Nacogdoches, and it takes me back to 8 Seconds. Remember that movie about Lane Frost?
Uh-huh.
And Tuff Hedeman and all those guys. I loved that stuff back in the day. So, for those who don't know, early on, when I was trying to figure out what the heck is Cristiano going to do, I joined the Pro Rodeo Cowboy Association. I was on the bull riding circuit for 2 years, and I got the luxury of going through Texas and have my fair share of fights and all the good stuff that comes along with the rodeo life. But always makes me think of that movie, 8 Seconds, such a good one. And because they wrote it out in Nacogdoches and Mesquite and like where all the good stuff is. But did you know I was that I was a bull rider? Did you ever know?
No, I did not. That's interesting.
You learned something new today, huh?
Yeah. I knew you raced cars. I didn't know that.
Did do that. Yep. That race cars, that was part of my life for a lot longer than bull riding. Bull riding was a short stint. Fun few years of learning about yourself and talk about mental fortitude. That's one that is right up there. But you know what? It's interesting is as I was prepping for the podcast too, I was looking at, I'm a big history buff, so I love learning about history and the history of companies, even before you. And now the founder of McWilliams and Son is it your grandpa?
Yeah, it's my grandpa.
Mac, nickname, call sign, Mac, whatever you want to call it. Now he was a sailor. He was in the Navy, right?
That's correct.
Very cool. My dad was in the Navy. Very cool. So, and that's where he cut his teeth on HVAC, refrigeration, things like that. And it was, what was the name of the ship he was on? I even know I read it. What the heck was it?
Kitty Hawk.
That's it. So, served his country, which is awesome. Love that. But what's also interesting is you also served your country in a way, but by way of state of Texas, and it was this amazing paper that you wrote all by yourself back in high school on what it's like to be an American, and you ended up winning like the statewide contest, man, and even got to be represented by the state of Texas, all without missing football practice. Trey, how did you pull that off, man? Tell me, where was the inspiration?
I don't know where this came from. So I won state in a writing contest of a paper I didn't write. So for some of the listeners that know me and know the relationship, me and my sister Crystal, she's also in the industry, and I've always relied on Crystal for a lot of stuff, even in high school. So I didn't like writing. She loved writing. I said, that's the perfect combination. So why don't you write me a paper? And my English teacher said, Trey, you won regionals. I was like, that's cool. I better read the paper and see what it's all about. And then I won state. And then I went to my football coach and was like, listen, whatever we got to do, I cannot go and accept this reward. So make sure we have practice or something. So, so I still have that trophy and proud about it too. I'm still proud.
The best trophy you never earned.
Yeah, that's it.
Gosh, I was asking Crystal for a story this morning that like most people wouldn't know, and she told me that. I was like, perfect. This plays right into my intro with your grandpa.
Yeah.
So that's great. Now, you and I got to connect a little bit at Pantheon. I guess at this point in time, it'd probably be about a month or so ago, and had lunch together, and we're just talking about a lot of the crazy things that you do, and it just sparked up good conversation. And that's like literally, I'm like, I need to get you on the podcast and just talk about your story a little bit too, because it's a really good one too. And you've kind of been through it in the trades and coming from East Texas, and we'll just call it the middle of nowhere Texas, because it's kind of like the middle of nowhere Texas. But to have so much success in the trades, and having been so hands on, I think it's a really great story for everybody to hear, of all shapes and sizes for companies. But what I also you've also been to the last. Have you been to the last 2 Rhino X events?
Yeah, I have.
So, real quick, shameless promotion. Why? Like, why do you keep coming back? What is it that you take away from it? Is it just like what are the things that you're taking away from it?
I think it's the caliber of people that it attracts. I think one of my successes or things that I really leveraged to grow is exposure, right? It's like, and getting around the right exposure. So all exposure isn't right. And so there's a lot of noise in our space, especially today, where just, influencers or whatever you want to call that, this new era.
Yeah.
But really getting to the people that are at Rhino, to me, they do it every day. Like they're not just talking about it. They are the guys in the trenches doing it, and at a very, very high level. So that's just what intrigues me about going. And then obviously the content and the discussions are just, they're relevant, and they're raw, and they're truthful. Like, and they're just great tools and resources to take away from there.
Yeah, man, we cram a ton of shit into a day. But one, I appreciate you continue to come back and thanks. And it makes me like, that's the whole purpose for putting this thing on is maybe you sit in the day session and you take something away. Maybe you don't. Maybe it's just that, like you said, you want to go and be introduced to some of these people that are arguably the best to do it in the industry, or that are currently, amazed. Just being around the people and making the connections and getting the phone numbers and the exchanges, and then kind of, getting maybe changing your circle of influence, with that's happened to a few people there. We did a podcast with, I think Jason Bueller. Have you met Jason Bueller before? So perfect case study is he came in and he said, he left there thinking like, I belong in this group. I may not be the size of some of these guys, but I belong in this group. Like I have the same, ambition and I've been taking action, and he did. But the another great, event that's coming up that I'm excited for is the First Home Service Freedom Tommy's event. That's in November, and I'll be going to that and navigating the marketing panel. So if anybody hasn't, we did a podcast a few weeks ago on the Home Service Freedom event. Pretty cool deal. Anything Tommy does, I feel like goes exceptionally well, because he like pours his heart into it. And I like to think that maybe he takes away some tips from Rhino X on how to make it really cool. So let's go ahead and jump into a little bit of your story, Trey, and maybe just go ahead and tee up with the listeners, because you again, coming from a third generation, company, being around the industry for such a long time, and and seeing a lot of great success hitting, at a lot of different levels. Maybe just share with the listeners kind of a little bit about like where you're at today, or with what your journey's been like all the way up to today with Blue Cardinal.
Yeah. So and I'll keep it brief so we can really like cover, I think, some maybe give out some good tips for the listeners. But I grew up in the trades, like we were talking about, third generation. My grandfather retired from the Navy, started air conditioning business. My dad followed suit. And so I graduated high school in 2004. I had worked for my dad all through high school, and I graduated and thought, hey, the right thing to do is just go into family business and work. So I did that. And, it was about 2010. The business was at a point where culturally it wasn't where I wanted it to be. It was a great lifestyle business. So my dad had done had great life growing up. My dad made all my ball games. Like it served its purpose. But as you begin to like look at, how's this built? How can I build a company that will take care of me and my dad? And if I feel that way, how do I build a business that can take care of all the employees that think the same way I do? And it was a real pivotal moment in my life of just like, if I feel this way, so does my people. And a lot of the people that working for us, wasn't the right people. But in order to make the change, it was going to take a lot of energy. And I was very fortunate to have a dad that I sat down in 2010 and said, hey, I'm willing to put in the effort if you're willing to go on a journey with me of growing this business and changing the culture. And, I know I get to meet a lot of different family businesses, and there's every different dynamic you can think of, right? But I was fortunate for my dad to say, Trey, if you got the energy, I'll get behind you 100%. And in 2010, he did exactly that. He let me fail. He let me, start building this company and really put my own identity on it. And he dug into the marketing, which he's very creative on that. My dad was just one of these that he wasn't going to rock the boat. And the second piece is like he didn't have the energy it was going to take, because we all know to change culture, you're going to lose some people. And when you lose those people, that workload doesn't fall to the others, it falls to you. And, I was willing at the time to take on that burden, and, I worked a lot, but we started seeing progress, really started growing the business. By 2015, my dad became an absentee owner and, was out of the operations 100%. I had built a team. We had made a couple, about $1.5 million acquisitions. So we'd bought about $3 million worth of revenue in 2 different markets. So we had a couple locations by then and was having, great growth. By 2018, I bought my dad out of the business 100%. At the same time, Crystal Williams, my sister, was our lead marketer. And, I was at the point too where, I knew Crystal wanted her own identity. She was really kind of underneath the McWilliams and Son identity. And it was all about Trey. And, and I knew she was super talented in what she done. So me and Crystal spun off a marketing company for her to kick off and create her own identity, and just started growing the business. And in 2018, my eyes were kind of open too. It's like, what's going on in this private equity world, this consolidation, like something's going on. I've seen a lot of friends, partner with businesses, make a lot of money, have more freedom than I have. I'm growing a business, worried about payroll, worried about all these things every day, and they're, on the beach somewhere. And I had a lot of runway left, so I was not looking for an exit strategy. But what I was looking for is like, either I got to join this group, this movement, or I got to be able to compete against it. And so really just started, for me, exposure's king. So I reached out some close friends of mine that had built some businesses and sold them and had been in the private equity world. And I said, I'm really not interested in partnering with private equity right now. What I want to know is I want to understand what they're looking at and how they go to market. So they connected me with some friends of theirs, and for 2.5 years, I met with them about once a month, and all they did was show me deals, how they looked at deals, how they saw the value, where they saw where they saw the issues. And it really just taught me a lot about, like, what I learned very quickly was private equity is a very loosely used word. It can mean a lot of different things, right? And it all serves its purpose and the mission that they're trying to accomplish. But through that, I started, I had grown the business to a sizable business, and by this time we had 4 locations, and really was looking like, how do I go to the next level? I couldn't build fast enough. My risk tolerance was like at its cap. Like it was like, and really when I say that, it wasn't so much to me as it was every night when I went home and looked at my 3 children and my wife to say, why are you risking everything that you got when you have enough money to take off the table right now to really set my family up for success for long term? And so how do I do both? And honestly, I think he's been on your podcast, but I had met Terry Nicholson, and really was, me and Terry really started collaborating a lot together. And like, Terry, this is where I'm at. And he, if anybody knows Terry, he answers everything with a question. And so just really
Terry is such like, yeah, everything is answered with the question, which actually makes the conversation so great.
Yeah. So really started pulling out of me. He's like, Trey, so what you're telling me is you want to keep growing a big business as fast as you possibly can, but you want to de-risk it where you can take care of your family. I said, yes. And he's like, well, what's that perfect scenario look like? And I said, well, it's, finding the right partner. So I went down that journey of like, I'm going to join a group, and there's a ton of great groups out there, and made some great relationships. But at the end of the day, really what I was looking for was, I really feel like we're in a people building business. That's what I'm in. And I wanted to outlook beyond 3 or 5 years, and doesn't mean that I don't want a liquidity event or financial gain in 3 to 5 years. We all enjoy the money side of it, but at the end of the day, I wanted to make sure 10 years from now I could look back and be proud of what I built and know I set my people up for success. And I really struggled with that. And so I called Terry and was like, I'm not doing this. And he's like, Trey, you told me this is what you want to do. And I said, well, this is what I feel, and this is what I'm seeing, and this is just, this is what I believe is truth. And he said, well, then, why don't you figure out how to build your own platform? And so that's where Blue Cardinal really came from. Was, hey, we want to build something that at the end of the day is like-minded operators that want to build something for the long haul. Again, it doesn't mean that the private equity partners that we partner with doesn't want 3 to 5 year returns. They do. That's the nature of the beast. But it was about building something that we constantly looked in the future. We wasn't an EBITDA collection company. We're looking in the future of how to build this sustainable, how to put a marketing plan together, how to build, your staffing plans. All these things was important for me to start building this Blue Cardinal platform. We're a year in, just last month with our capital partner, and we've done 7 transactions and closed 2 more transactions in the next 30 days, and having a lot of fun. But which kind of leads into a lot of, like, I think the mental fortitude and things that we're going to talk about today is just the evolution of me as a leader, and evolution really as my people through this journey over the last 5 years.
Yeah, I mean, well, first off, congratulations. It's cool, and I've even before you and I met, I'd always heard good things about you. So for you to know that, I think is important. So you got good character. Either that or these are your friends, and they're and probably the same circle as mine. But yeah, because I think that that's, by the way, if you don't know Terry Nicholson, we have had him on the podcast. I've asked him to basically open Rhino X the last 2 years because he's so damn good. He's he's a great speaker, and he's been in the industry a long time, and he's trained some of the greats himself. Mm-hmm. So great guy. Shout out to Terry. He won't listen to this, but
I'll tell you. I mean, I've been fortunate to have a lot of mentors. Whether that was coaches to a dad to different people, but from the industry. He's poured into me sometimes when I didn't even want him to pour into me, right? And so he's been a guy that's has bootstrapped a lot of stuff with me, and when he didn't have to, and I can't tell him thank you enough. So
well, so I want to jump in for our listeners because over the last few months prior to this episode airing, I had Goodrich back in here. He's been on the podcast 9-10 times, something like that. And I always like getting him in here to talk through anytime any conversation comes up around instability in a market or unknowns in a market or whatever. I always love his point of view. And he's been through quite a few things, but I also have been going down the path of just saying, hey, even if demand is low, and in a lot of markets it is, and it has been, that doesn't mean it's gone. It just means it's low. So somebody's going to fight for it and somebody's going to win it. But there's also things that you can start to do. You can look at internally to fix the business. So there's another way. But the other piece of it is, and the part that I'm really interested to get into this with you, because everyone is capable of leveraging this tool, and that's your mind and the mental fortitude of just being in business, and because you went through multiple levels of growth all the way up to now being, with Blue Cardinal and having multiple brands and significantly more responsibility, all along the way, you probably didn't, you don't have the same, maybe you have the same mindset of hey, this is my vision and this is what I'm going to continue to work for. And our mantra at, on To The Point is no 0 days, is you still sometimes have to train your brain, to how you're going to work through mental fortitude. Perfect example is having a conversation with my son yesterday. He plays football, and he is a 12-year-old boy. He's spaces out. He only cares about football. He doesn't care about school, even though we've told him school comes first. So I'm having conversations with him. I go, I've been traveling a ton over the last few weeks. I think you know that. Like, so haven't been home that much. And so I went to his football practice and watched because I love doing that. And I watched him like go out there and make some really good plays in practice. And then when it came time to run, he was like towards the back. He's like one of the fastest kids on the team. And so I was like, Mason, you just made this amazing play, like this amazing catch and juked these kids and went and scored. And then you finished off the practice with you were at the back of running. What do you think the last thing the coach thought about you was? You were at the back running. You're one of the fastest kids on the team. I was like, and I said, what was it? He's like, I was just, spacing out. And I was thinking like, I'm tired. I was like, dude, you're tired, but you still have 30% left in the tank. Like it's a mental game. And so he went out, he was out and the next practice and I was sitting there and I'm watching and he like has a great practice. But it's just this mental thing that he gets in. It's like, I didn't want to go to the gym yesterday. I still don't. I got a lot of buddies that are going to the gym, working out, and talk about, sooner or later you're going to love it. I still don't love it, but I go. I feel better afterwards. But even being, in business, for myself too is, it's challenging. Whenever you bring on more responsibility, you have to almost like pep talk yourself through certain days, and I for sure have those. But as you're going through different levels, like you've done, I think it changes. Like the pep talk you got to give yourself changes. And maybe it's not a drastic change, but it definitely changes. And everybody that's listening is control of that. And no matter what level that you're at right now, listening to it, whether you're a PE guy or gal, or contractor or GM or technician or whatever it is, you're going through some level or going to be going through some level of transformation or growth. And so where's your head at? And that's what I wanted to have the conversation with Trey around because he's been through so many levels and been through them successfully. Guessing it's not all been sunshine and roses, and rainbows. But let's talk through that a little bit. So maybe if you can take our listeners through like the mental journey and the mental fortitude that you had to forge through on this path. And hopefully what they can do is relate to some of the situations you've been in and how you got through it.
Yeah, no, I'd love to. And I think, Chris, it all starts with like, what is your vision, right? So like, what are you working for? Because there's going to be days when things aren't going to go correct. And I don't care what state of business development and leadership development you're in. There's going to be days that just nothing goes right or there's no light at the end of the tunnel. And so I think it's important that, what good looks like is going to change over time, but you got to have a good idea what good looks like and what are you working for. So, early on in my state in the journey, being a technician, and looking around saying, this isn't what I want to be a part of long term. Like it was painting that vision of what does a great company look like. And it wasn't as big as it is today. As my dreams aren't as big as they were, but it was just like, I want to make X, in my particular case, like I truly wanted my dad to have a retirement, like, and there was no vision for that at that point. Like I wanted him to be able to retire from the business with dignity. So it's what are the driving factors first of identifying those. And a lot of times people say, well, it's my kids, it's whatever. And I think it's making sure that you can quantify those throughout those stages. And they all, like I said, they'll change. If it's about the money, it's tough because at some point you get enough money that an extra dollar is not going to motivate you anymore. So it's like, what's motivating you? So early on, like I said, it was just the amount of work and labor, the physical labor I was having to commit to get this thing forwards, and without any money to do anything with. So it was sweat equity is all I had, right? And so as I went through that journey and started moving up, it's what you soon learn for me, and it hasn't changed yet, is like, I don't know what's around the corner because I'm running the biggest business I've ever ran in my life today. And tomorrow I'll run the biggest business I've ever ran in my life. So for me, it's learning, it's creating the culture, the personal culture to me of like learning disciplines, learning, continuing to educate myself. I think a lot of times that's not part of your daily regimen, and it doesn't take long, especially in the speed in which the industry is moving, to be behind. But I've went through, I think, cloud nine of running a $10 million company that was super profitable, growing at 30%, thinking I was the biggest, baddest guy on the block, to, running a bigger business I am today, and sometimes don't seem like I can get anything right because we have so many balls in the air, right? And I think that's the biggest mental challenge I had to really come to real was used to I prided myself on keeping all the balls in the air, and I can't anymore. And it's about keeping the right balls in the air, right? And that's a tough thing to do because there's going to be stuff that falls through the cracks as you scale a business, and it's like being okay with that. And I think that's where I am today. Is just and I've been in that spot. As you build out your leadership team, less balls will fall through the cracks. And like we're in that point where we're building out a leadership team, much like a group that that's going from $10 million to 15 million. Well, that's a big. A lot of times it's a big org redesign when you take that next step. And the thing that I focus on a lot now and come to reality with is it's what is Trey doing every day to develop his leaders around him to be able to move this thing forwards. And when you're scaling a business quickly, and I think I took pride in this, and I know a lot of contractors I talk to is like he's been with me from the beginning. He was my bookkeeper, and now he's my CFO. That works great if you have the ability to motivate those people to scale the same rate you do.
Right.
And it gets tough when you're scaling a business like we are right now of like, how do I keep everybody that's on my team that I would tell you brought me to the dance, like those people I am loyal to, like, how do I continue to elevate them at the same speed I'm elevating?
Hey, quick question on that. I don't mean to cut you off. So on that, because this is a challenge, especially when you have multiple leaders, and something that I think is very important is what are you doing to check in with those leaders like regularly to make sure that they're coming along with you?
Yeah. So I think first off, the hardest piece, it takes a lot of emotional capital, right? As you scale the emotional capital it takes and put that in a year that's not all roses.
Right.
It's a challenging year too.
Yep.
So it's double the energy. I think the first thing is like in your planning sessions is be very clear what good looks like. And, so it takes the time, we're kicking off budget for 2024 right now, annual planning, and then moving into budget. And, it's about what's the contribution level that I'm expecting out of my leadership team and what does good look like and making sure you can quantify that. That's the first piece. And then second is constantly like checking in with them to say, hey, what do you got going on? What do you need from me? And making sure that you're still approachable. And I think one of the conversations I was having with my COO, Luke, the other day was no matter how fast paced the corporate gets, we got to make sure it looks slow paced to the outside looking in because it's overwhelming.
Yep. Yeah. That's really good. I mean, I've not met your COO, but you guys are having what appears to be a really great, solid, well put together organization. But I completely understand, so for anybody listening is, even though we're talking about managing, multiple different people, this could also just be you. Like if you're a single truck deal, or you're still a smaller shop.
Yeah. I think at the end of the day, like leadership, your job is to work yourself out of a job. Yeah. That is like, you can set it up to where you can pass it on to someone else. So like I wasn't able to move up in our family business until I could hire my replacement or develop my replacement. In that particular case, I always developed them. So I think that no matter where you're sitting in on the org chart or on scale today, it's the only way you can scale a business is you got to have your replacement trained prior to moving.
Yeah, because when you're juggling a lot of the balls, like I say this often. I'm very high functioning ADHD, and I feel like I thrive in chaos, but it's not the best way to do it. And at a certain size, you can't do it. You can't do it as efficiently as you need to do it. And so you do have to try and find the right people to put in there that you trust. And if they're 80% as good as you, good. Like they don't need to be 100% as good as you. That's a mistake you see people make often, right? Like you say, I'll just take it and do it myself because they can't do it as good as me. But they're not thinking about what else that time could free up for them, to do that's greater. That serves a greater purpose. So leadership training is something that's important. Like, it seems like it's super important to you.
Yeah. So I mean, and it's been quite some time back, but I went through and became a John Maxwell certified trainer because that's really where I started, was helping my own people, right? My own organization, and then branched out and started using some different things. And I think there's a lot of different avenues of doing that. I think the biggest thing, like I said, is having a clear expectations for where they need to be, and like, what's my non-negotiable. So the culture side of my business is a non-negotiable. Here's some basic metrics that are non-negotiable. Like, these things have to be met. These are table stakes for our company, and these things you're going to do. And then beyond that, I think that's really where, like, okay, like to your point, like, that might be the 20% they're not as good at as me. But what I've came to realize is, like, if you hire for your weaknesses, they'll compliment you really well, and you'll be able to pick up where they're not good at, and they're going to pick up where you're good. And it makes the chemistry and that you create is a lot better. And hiring those people, like, I'm not the rah person, right? So, like, I get here in the mornings, I come to my office, and I go to work, right? And that's just how I am. Luke, my COO, I knew the amount of emotional capital it was going to take to manage all these different relationships. I needed someone. I mean, Luke's the guy at 4:00 in the morning I get a text message from every morning. It says rise and grind, like, and he's at the gym. He's high energy, like, and that's not who I am. I'm more strategic, and I am more, my cadence is a lot different than his, and it's more, like, if you're going to, choose someone to kill, like, I'm the person to kill because you're going to be able to pattern me really easy. Luke, he's all over the place, right? So, but I think that's the important piece too, as you gain this, because that mental freedom and the mental side of growing a business, like, you're going to be forced to rely on other people, and how well you develop those people is like how much mental freedom you're going to have. And I think that's, anybody scaling a business probably know that's probably hitting home with them right now, because it's tough, especially when things aren't going right. Call counts down or whatever.
Yep.
It definitely highlights just where your weaknesses are.
You said, mental freedom. It made me just think of, like, it could be stop talking yourself out of hiring the person, like, and be thinking differently. And listen, sometimes it is like listening to this podcast, or just getting in the right circles, or getting around the right people, or going and doing shop visits or whatever that help unlock that mental roadblock for you of, okay, if I hear it enough times, then maybe it's actually true versus what I think is the right thing to do. But the whole thing around like Tommy's event is this called the Freedom Event, and it's kind of to try to get some financial freedom, and you go to these things to learn the things, and it doesn't always necessarily need to be the like a new process or system or WYSIWYG or whatever the heck it is that you take back and implement. Sometimes it's just about being around different mindsets of people who have been successful, because that matters. Your circle of influence matters. And so what Trey is talking about is he also recognizes I'm not the rah-rah. He's not the rah-rah guy. He's the integrator. He is the come in and he's got his systems and processes. And by the way, which is an incredibly important part to scaling a company. That's not me. I'm more like Luke. I'm more the rah-rah sales marketing guy and have all the energy, and I go do all the things. I've had to learn how to be that, because as a business owner, you have to learn those things. But same thing. We have great leadership who fill the gaps on the things that I'm not good at. I get to focus on what I'm great at, and that helps you scale faster. So that is what we're talking about when we're talking about mental fortitude. Like, those are the things that you have to look past. Is you just got to think not everybody's wrong. Maybe you're wrong, and you need to rewire your thinking on how to scale this thing and start believing in other people who can help you fill the gaps on the things that you aren't good at.
And my regrets have always been not hiring someone. I don't have very many regrets that I hired someone, had to fire them, right? It's okay. I took the chance. It wasn't like my business went backwards during that time, like it does when you fail to hire someone. And I think that's important piece too, is just like, I think that the commitment you got to make when you go that way is that you are willing to hold them accountable, and you are willing to part ways with them if it doesn't work out. But I think being so hesitant to hire someone looking for this perfect candidate that may not exist.
Hey, I got a question for you. So going back to maybe earlier days for you at McWilliams, is you went where you went? Did you go from GM to COO, or was it where was what was your path before you became CEO? Just give me the two prior.
Yeah, so I've never been given a title my whole life as far as like a title. So a title change, like, so what I did was I was a service technician and I sold. Then I started managing the installation crew, and then from there, my dad handled basically the financial piece and the marketing piece. And by 2010, when I started taking over operations, I brought in my sister to handle the marketing, and I brought in Brad, which was a school teacher, math school teacher, and was really like, if you know anything about math side of the world, like processes. And we were in that stage in life where we really didn't have processes for anything. We had good theories of how to do stuff, but like nothing documented. He was ready to get out of the teaching field. Hired Brad to sit him in a room next to me and literally built every process of our business, which eventually moved into the financial piece of our business and was managing the financials. So I say all that, by 2013, everybody was answering to me at the company, but it was never like this official, like, Trey moved to GM. I started, I was wearing all the hats and slowly but surely started letting them go one hat at a time until I was managing everybody that was wearing the hats.
And were you ready for that when that came up?
No,
of course.
I don't think you're ever ready. Like, no. So, I mean, and I think a lot of people that listen to this call, like, they're either you're younger than the people you're leading is a challenge. And then to make it even worse, you're the son of the boss.
Right.
Right. So like, and my dad used to tell me, Trey, if you ever give them ammo, they'll shoot you. Right. So like, be the first one to work, the last one to leave, make sure your truck's the cleanest, make sure you're the highest performer. And so I always prided myself on that. But, I moved up a technician that we hired, Andrew, and he came on board with us. And Andrew was 25 years old, I think, at the time. And our average age of technician was probably 40. Andrew worked for us for 2 years, and we moved into service manager because he was a top performer, really had the challenge was, he was a 27-year-old that had been working for the business 2 years in the trades for 2 years. Oh. Was he the right choice? He was the right choice. But was he ready for, I think the leadership style that he was going to have to overcome was like coming in as this young guy. No. So the reality is I don't think you're ever really ready for the leadership shift.
Yeah, and that was the point I wanted to get across there by listening is, if you're waiting until you're ready, you'll never make the jump. Like you're not going to be ready, and you just got to get into it and go and learn, and you will get ready. God, I hear that story so much. People are like, oh, I'm not ready. And it bugs me because, listen, you said something that I've said for years and kind of a different way. And it was around every day this company grows is a size company I've never run before. So I'm constantly feeling like I'm never ready.
Yeah. And I think when I really decided, hey, I'm going to create the, Blue Cardinal, the first, the thought that was in my head was like, first off, people are betting their livelihood on me.
Yep.
Moving forwards, right? Which is a
big deal.
Big deal. And some of these in the businesses that are partnering with us, it's their life's work. Like they've worked their whole entire life to create it's an identity of who they are in the city they're from, right? And so looking at that, I was like, and again, I kind of go back to Terry. I was like, here's what here's the things I don't have. Like, and it was like, well, then your partner you're going to partner with, make sure they have that skill set. Your first COO, make sure they have this. And it was really, what it came from me was like, Trey, you have enough leadership to build the right team. So if you build the right team, you can fix the holes in your leadership ability or your lack of knowledge. And, but one thing it is very hard to do is you can't teach people passion and drive, right? And like Terry said, you got that. Like you're about the right purpose. You care about the people, and you respect the trades. Like you cannot teach that. That's something that I think is gives you a special leg up as you move forwards. And so I really embrace that. So like, my hires have been, it's been very methodical and thought out, because at the end of the day, they're going to make me either look good or bad, right? So, but I think making that leap, because trust me, I think I'd be lying if I told people, like, there's not days I get up and wondering what the heck I'm doing. Like, holy crap, what did I get into? Or I got a lot to learn.
I had that yesterday.
Yeah, but I think the day we think we arrived is the day we have a problem, right? And being humble enough to come to Rhino X and rub shoulders with those guys that, a lot of those are seasoned vets, and somewhat, friendly competitors, but we're after the same thing in business, but we may have a fresh perspective that's going to give us some leg up, and then they have some things that they're doing that are great as well. So, like, just being willing to put yourself out there, but I think the biggest thing is get mentally prepared that, what got you here won't get you there, right? And what are you going to do about changing that, and what exposure, and like how far really how big your dreams are, is like how far ahead in exposure you need to get. Like, so, like, if I want to be a $15 million company in a year, then I probably need to start talking to the $50 million player today and start rubbing shoulders with him to figure out what they're doing right, and make sure I stay a step ahead of where I'm wanting to go.
Have you done quite a few shop tours over the years?
Yeah, I've done quite a few, and have had, like, main thing I think is, like, the events is, like, going there with a mission, like, yeah. And how do I get close to someone to, like, understand what they're doing, like, get their time, because I think they're all busy, and then how do I ask good questions, I think, because use Tommy Mello as an example, like, I love him. If you let him run the conversation, he'll take you everywhere.
Oh,
so
yeah.
You better be prepared for, like, what do I really want to get out of this guy, because he's a wealth of knowledge. Because what he's done an unbelievable job of is connecting himself and truly being a student, yep. Right? And so he has great ideas, but I think if you go talk with Tommy, like, the best thing to do is, like, what are the things I want to get accomplished in this conversation with him today? Because if you don't have those before you go into it, he'll have you'll be chasing rabbits somewhere else.
Yeah, this is a great point. Actually, I want to mention this real quick to all of our listeners, and to anybody who goes to any event. You have to go with an agenda, and the agenda can't just be so open as, to go learn things. If it is where you want to connect with somebody specifically, here's how I go to everything as a business owner, because if I'm flying and leaving my family and my employees and my business to go and be better, I got to have a game plan to get there. So I go in with this thing called an MPV. And so my MPV is V for visionary. What's the absolute, like, best case scenario that I can walk away from this particular event? It might be making this partner, bringing on this particular customer, or a specific connection needs to be made. Like, the best case scenario, my visionary. My primary goal is I have to walk out with XYZ. That's my primary goal from going to this event. And at worst case scenario, my minimum is XY. So, but I have, like, this 3-tiered, approach of I need to accomplish at least the primary, worst case scenario, the minimum. But if it really goes really great, I'll hit the visionary. You hit the visionary once out of every 20 deals, or 20 meetings or whatever, but I'm at least going in with an agenda with the primary. So to Trey's point, if it's to meet a certain person, you got to have the questions, the things that you want to get answered, and then you go and make the connection yourself. Because you come to Rhino X, the reason we keep it small is to keep it less intimidating for some of those who aren't that comfortable yet to become comfortable going and talking to Leland or to Ken or to Frank or to whoever. So go in with an absolute, not general, but like specific agenda for any meeting that you go to. That's great advice.
And I think on that too, Chris, is like, as you cultivate that relationship, you got to find ways to add value to them, right? Yep. Because that's and not everybody, but it's natural instinct that I want to get something out of it too. So, like, so like also identifying where can I add value to these people, because I don't care if you're a small player or a big player, there's probably something that you're good at, like whether that's some marketing piece that you're using that you want to share. Like those are things that are important too, like adding value to those people.
Yeah, that's thank you for saying that. Super important. You can't just take, and that is normal. And even if that's not your intention, it's just kind of the way it comes across is you're trying to gather information from people who are smarter than you, and you might not feel like you have any value to add. So it's not necessarily like you're taking on purpose. It's just kind of the nature of the beast. I was with at Pantheon. I slipped out and went over to watch my old partner, Gary Vaynerchuk, give a little presentation with the Rilla voice guys. And he's the one that taught me exactly what you just said and that, because it's hard for me to go to him, and who's given me so much information, who helped start this podcast, by the way. And I met up with him in the green room before he went on. And that's what I said to him. I said, hey, man, is there anything I can do for you? Like with this group that's here, anything? And it seems weird to say that to Gary Vaynerchuk. Like, hey, how can I help you, Gary? And knowing he's probably going to say nothing. Like his whole thing is, nah, man, just, I appreciate you coming here. That was enough. Like to come in and seeing me, that was enough. And I was like, cool. So, but the point is that I still feel the need to ask him all the time. Like, hey, what can I do for you?
And I think it even goes further. Like I'll use Ken Goodrich. Like he's going to be bombarded at an event with people wanting to talk to him. So it's like the way I can add value to Ken too is be truly prepared to have good content when I go talk to him. So be prepared. And so when I do speak with him, I've got a good, good dialogue with him, and not sit there and just, I'll be all over the place. Like how do I respect their time or whatever that, if they're giving me time, how do I respect their time? And when they give me stuff, like, I think what makes me the most fulfilling, I think when I share something with someone, they give me a follow-up of how they implemented it and how well it did. What does it make me want to do? It makes me want to give them more and more and more. So I think I always try to do that as well. It's like, I've had some great mentors, and when they give me some tips, I'll text them back, hey, want you to know, like, that was truly valuable in this situation today. I appreciate you.
Yeah, and that right there is also another thing of we're talking about, of just the mental game is not being afraid, being prepared, being, mindful of time, because that is the most valuable asset. So, but thinking that your question isn't good enough is the wrong thought. It's what's good for you, to Trey's point. Like, what does good look like to you is the question that you're asking, continuing you down that path. And don't you be afraid to ask those people the question. Like at Rhino X, they don't just speak and leave, they stay and they work with you, and we do masterminds together. Like that's the whole reason that they're there. So Trey's point is the best thing you can do is ask a very, very thoughtful question, because they want to be able to help you. That's why they're showing up. So that's just another level of like mental fortitude for yourself is don't be afraid. Don't be afraid to ask questions. If it's a thoughtful question, it gets you from A to B towards your good, ask the question. So I want to segue into, I think we're probably about, 45, 50 minutes into this thing. I love it. See, because anytime it goes this fast, Trey, it means conversation is great. And trust me, there's some podcasts where I've had to like really work through it. But you know what it is that we were having such a good conversation at Pantheon too. That's why I was like, man, there's so much we can go through, and I'm not even going to get to the other Bitcoin stuff. Like we'll save that for a different time, because the majority of listeners really don't care in comparison to the other stuff. But I think it is important that you at least share with the listeners too, because we kind of talked about it a little bit, and because you have so many different brands relying on you, it's the perfect case scenario. So you're currently in 2024 planning. You understand what the market looks like. The market with demand being low, call count being down. Whether that's you or not you who's listening right now, the vast majority of the United States, it is. So I know across all of our contractors, I see call counts from all over the place. So what are you doing then to prepare yourself and the brands to be successful in 2024, knowing that we're coming out of this slower market?
Yeah, so I think the first thing you got to do is like, when I look at first off, what do we have control over? That's the first thing. So like, I consider a general manager, he has control over the call the day it's booked, the time it's booked. So from that call's booked on, it's his baby. So like really, I think breaking those things down to where the excuses isn't about call count, narrowing it down to like, we're going to execute at this level everywhere we have control over. And so that's the first thing that we're like really focused on right now is when we get a call, what are we doing with it, right? And then backing up is from a standpoint of like how efficient and how effective is our call center from their booking rate, their cancellation rate, what's going on there. So really starting to break it down in pieces of what we have control over versus what we don't have control over. So call count, can we drop call count? Yes, but it's a lot of, you're a great marketer when it's 110 degrees and everybody's got $5,000 in their pocket, right? You're great, right? When everybody's maxed out their credit cards and it's raining for 2 weeks, you're a horrible marketer.
Yep.
Right. And so I think it's really starting to quantify like what do we have the ability to drive in marketing? What piece does economy play on this? What piece does weather play? And really starting to kind of lay those things out. I think what we get in trouble on is I think sales, is psychology. Like it's when they got a hot hand, they got a hot hand. It don't really matter what's going on around them. They're just good. So it's like, how do we keep their mindset on that? I think it's really narrowing down to let them focus on what they have control over. And that's what we talk about every day. It's like your conversion rate, your average ticket, what's your membership conversion rate, what's, from a marketing standpoint, what's the mix of age systems coming in? So are we running 30% of age? Or are we running 40% of age? Like really focusing on things that they can actually pull the levers on and help with. Because I think it's easy to get discouraged if all we ever do is look at the revenue number, and so I think going into 2024, the thing I learned through 2023 is like, we got to find things to celebrate about, and we got to keep our mindset, moving the right direction. And we need to have discouragement and we need to have corrective action when we can control it, and making sure that the burden and the pressure we're feeling as the leaders of this organization, aren't passed on to people that are executing on everything they have control over.
So do you remember two Rhino X ago when Mike Tyson was in and I was interviewing him and he had said, it's on the days you don't want to do it are the days you got to love it the most. And that's the mindset, right? Like it is, if it's the same thing when you got a guy who's got a hot hand who's selling, you celebrate the heck out of that thing and you need to keep him in that flow state and of like, I'm off to the races, but you got to find more things to celebrate about. And, this is where I love that I have, one, I'm so grateful for how many listeners this thing has grown to. So thank you for that. But, I try to use this stage, this podcast to encourage people to if you are blaming marketing constantly and that's your go-to, I ask you to just look into it to find out, is that really it? Is it maybe a mixture of, you're not paying attention to your call count. By the way, I see these things all the time. We're talking 700 contractors as clients. Like I see a few things and I see booking rates and I see lead volume coming in a call count. But the point is that if you know that maybe you're not paying enough attention, to the internal pieces of the business, like Trey's talking about, you get out of that mind frame of blame shifting and maybe take on accountability of like, you have a business to run. There's things internally that you might not be best at. And that, by the way, that's what winners do. That is 100%. Everybody hears me talk about my 95-5 rule. That's what the 5%ers do. That's what guys like Trey do, because that's what helps you grow and scale and get out of the position that you're in the first place. If the temperature is down and it's beautiful and demand is down, it's down for everybody in your market. But what are you doing to differentiate yourself and keep working through it? Well, look internally, look at some different things. Maybe take that opportunity to start working on some, leadership training and encouraging your leaders to think bigger, in their positions and be helpful.
In a growth, if you've been in a growth mode for 4 years, it's really a good time too to reset and also fix culture, right? Which means get rid of some people that don't fit your culture. So I think there's opportunity in every moment of the business. And I think for us, it's narrowing it down to like making sure I'm holding people accountable of what they have control over. And if they don't have control over it, like, let's not beat them up about it.
Yep. And I want to finish with this, just with this last piece is regardless of size of company, what my hope is always that you take something away from this that you can implement. And what I always am fearful about when someone's had some success is that they play the comparison card. I do need, I am living still paycheck to paycheck, so to speak, so these things don't apply to me. Anything that has to do with your mental fortitude applies to you regardless, like I said earlier. So, but reach out if it's confusing to you. If it's like, Trey's, you can connect with Trey to ask him questions, like reach out to the people. Don't be afraid to reach out to people and have them pep talk you through it if you need it. Because I guarantee you, Trey's walked in feeling defeated when he was a technician, when he was, leading McWilliams' son, or with any of the brands. Like I guarantee you, some of the brands have been defeated and need pep talks. So regardless of size, that's happening to everyone. So you're not alone. You're not alone. But Trey, let's go ahead and finish with this. For any of our listeners, and any of our listeners, and really, it doesn't matter who they are listening. What is like what size of company or where they're coming from, what shape or color? What is a really great piece of advice that you can give them that's tangible, going into 2024? Actually, listen, even I think when this podcast rolls out, there'll still be a few months left in this year. And that's a few months to make a difference, depending on what market you're in. If you're in Phoenix, that's when we go into preservation mode, or in Texas or South Florida. But like, what's like a really good, solid piece of advice you can give from your experience, having been down this path, been around it long enough to help them capitalize on, what is today's world?
I think you need to go get enough exposure, however much exposure it's going to take for you to get conviction to make you to really have enough conviction to go take massive action. So, I think being very intentional about what exposure you get, go find the things out that you don't know, and then put a plan together and take massive action and be willing to take the risk. And I think you won't regret it. I mean, we were spending marketing dollars. We were committing to marketing dollars we never had, because we were willing to take the risk to say, I put the things in place and I have enough faith and enough determination that I'm willing to commit to this marketing spend to grow my business. And I think, looking back now, it was a big thing, right? I mean, it was like we didn't have that much money in the bank and we were committing to these crazy marketing. But I think it all came down to, I got enough exposure that I saw other people doing it. And the reality is, guys, no one that you're going to go meet is much smarter than you are. Like, they're just willing to do it. And I think that's the biggest takeaway I have, is just go get the exposure, get the conviction that you're convicted enough to go all in and go do massive action.
Love it. This is going to play really well into what I'm about to say. Regardless of demand being down, call counts being down, there's someone just like you may be listening is going to be afraid, not take the risk, and pull back. The majority are going to pull back from things, reduce marketing budget, and play the conservative card. And this is when Trey talks about taking risks, this is when you can take a very good risk. I will call it a very low risk, even though it seems high risk to them having seen it. But someone is going to double down and take advantage of taking market share in that moment, because the majority of their competitors pulled back. Why not that? Why not that be you? Trey's talking about spending money that they didn't have, and him taking that risk, maybe being more of a conservative and being around enough people and feeling like confident enough to take the risk allowed him to move forward. Some of the most successful contractors, not necessarily just the biggest, but the most successful, are willing to double down when the market's rough, knowing that the majority of your competition is going to pull back. It's a great time to take market share. So thanks for saying that. Trey, good to have you on, my friend.
Yeah, enjoyed it, Chris. Enjoyed it.
I'm excited. Hey, if our listeners want to connect with you, what's the best way that they can connect with you?
Yeah, so we can share my email. It's trey@mcwilliamsandson.com is the best way, and I'll be happy to connect with them. I love the trades, love the people that's in the trades, and would love to help any way I can.
Yeah, man. Well, I appreciate you coming on sharing your story too. I'm sure this won't be the last time we'll have you on too. I'll be excited to have you back on once we're down the road a bit and we see how Blue Cardinal is taking off and what all that's doing. Then where you're at that point.
Yeah. No, it's a fun journey, so I'm enjoying it.
Well, so I appreciate you coming on, Trey, and to our listeners, hopefully you enjoyed that. And listen, he encourage you, connect with them, and ask Trey the questions if you're nervous to reach out to him. I don't know, Trey, whatever. I don't know if you're going to any shows in the near future, but just gave you his email. That's a great start, and he'll respond. So, but you said a few things I just want to kind of recap on, and it's we're talking a lot about mental fortitude and just. And sometimes, training your brain also takes a coach or takes skill. And there's lots of podcasts that you can find around just mental toughness or mental, or mindset or whatever you want to call it that you can learn from. I still do it. I still listen to those things. But you mentioned things like, what does good look like? That was probably one of my biggest takeaways, and making sure that whatever good looks like to you, that you have a clear path to what that looks like, and that you have everybody rowing in the same direction if you're large enough to have leadership in your leadership and management in your company. And then making sure that you have some non-negotiables. Like that's a key thing that you had mentioned that I think is critical. So be intentional with everything that you're doing and don't be afraid to take the risks. So like I always say, listeners, you don't got to do everything, but you got to do something. No 0 days.